Welcome back to V8 Creative and part 2 of the Morgan three-wheeler build, and on this episode we're going to be fueling and oiling. Yes, welcome back to the Dean Den, and we're here again, and this week we're spannering. Yes, back to spannering. Now, before we start, what I'd like to do is give a big shout out to everyone that left amazing comments on part 1 of this series. Thank you so much, because I know the Morgan three-wheeler is a complete opposite to the Ultima RS I've just built, but is it? This machine here, in its time, was, put it this way, a British sports car that was hitting well above its weight, as is the Ultima. But what I'd also like to shout out is all of you that are new to the channel. Yes, I've reached out to the Morgan community and I can see I'm getting a lot of traction here. So stick with it. I need you guys and girls because I'm going to ask some questions, and I'd like some answers in the comments. So before we go over to the assembly bench, what I'd like to do is say, if you're watching this and you're building an Ultima RS, still, if you've got any questions, just fire them over and I'll help you out if I possibly can. Anyway, let's get on with some spannering. Here we are again. We're at the assembly bench where spannering happens. Yes, spannering, less driving, but this time we're actually going to be putting stuff together. Now, as I said in the intro, what we're going to be focusing on today is the fuel system and the oiling system. Now, clearly the engine isn't complete, so really what this is, we're talking about the tanks, the lines, the filters, the brackets to hold everything in place. So in front of me here is much the same as me opening a box from Ultima. But here, these are clean components that my dad has actually brought together. Now, if we go along here, here is clearly the fuel tank. Now, it's made of steel, and it's more than just a fuel tank. This top quarter is for oil, because this engine has basically a dry sump system. Yeah, believe it or not, 1933 dry sump, yeah, ahead of its time. But we'll talk a bit more about that when I actually pop this on the car. And then the rest, which is about 4 gallons, this is for fuel. Now, the necks are made of brass, beautiful brass. And where are the caps? Here's the caps. And I remember my dad saying, "Don't you cross-thread those, Nipper." They are beautiful. They just thread on. And it is so easy to get them cross-threaded, but look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Wow. So this flange you see here, this actually connects to the wooden firewall with self-tapping screws. Of course, no problem there, is there? And if we rotate this, what we can see is in the oil tank, we've got a feed and return, and the oil pump is actually inside the engine. Now, if we look at the fuel tank, there's just one outlet, no fuel injection here, and this outlet purely feeds the engine by gravity. There's no fuel pump. It just is positioned above the carburetor and basically just gives it what it wants. So this tank has been media blasted, it's been painted, and also inside there was fuel, or what remained of fuel after about 8 years. It absolutely stank. It was like a green resin. So I'll put up there the sort of chemical I popped in there, and I swirled it around, I left it to sit, I rinsed it out again and again and again. So this is completely clean, it's been pressure tested, no leaks, and we're ready to go. Now, on the subject of fuel, what I've got here is the carburetor. It's called Amel, which is one of the makes that were commonly fitted to Morgan three-wheeler matchless engines. And this is so small. It's so small. And here, this is the tickle. It's like a choke, really. What it's doing is it's basically pumping a little bit of fuel in so when you start it up. So on episode 1, you'll see my dad doing that. He goes, duh, 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 part of the starting procedure. Now, this sits basically in between the 2 cylinders, and then this a lovely bit of chrome here, this T-piece, goes in here, and then here and here actually goes direct into the cylinders. So if you see, it's a very short path to actually introducing the air and fuel mixture. So that's basically the fueling system. Now, the pipes, well, there's a load of pipes here. To be honest, I don't know which is which. However, I've got the model. And this model is going to be really useful because my dad replicated the real thing to the minutest detail. So if I don't know where something goes, I just look at this. It's much better than any manual. So what we've got is, oh, this is great. My dad didn't have proper benders. You could see he put it in the vise and he just tweaked it here and there. And then you can see where he has basically soldered on the end nipples. And then here are the brass connections. Oh, they're great. So there's a whole variety of these things. Some of them for fuel, some of them for oil. And I'm sure we'll figure out what's what when we start putting it together. So we have a load of those, and then here, these are my favourites, this. We have 2 beautiful taps. I'll do some close-ups for you and pop it up in the corner here. Now, these are just pieces of art. They look like they're off a steam train. And one is for fuel, and one is for oil. And again, this is part of this starting procedure. So what I've done is I've got new fibre washers for these, and what I'll do on the threads is I'll put some sealant on there to stop them leaking. So there's little taps. Now the tank itself, as I said, goes through the firewall, and this large flange is then sort of connected to that wood. Now to support it, the front of the tank, we have this contraption here. So this, with this, sandwiches the tank. Isn't that lovely? And then finally over here, there's this brace that just braces across the front of the car to give it some rigidity for where the tank sits. Now, this is the best bit, I think. The oil filter. It's great, this. I love this. So this is the oil filter here. This is the beautiful brass cap that goes on the oil filter. It's just lovely. And I've got another fibre washer. I've put a new one on here. But the cartridge that goes inside it is here. It's like, how should I put it? It looks like not wool, but it is basically some sort of fabric-y thing. And there is a cage over the top of it. Now, I did search on the internet how often this should be cleaned. Every 500 to 1,000 miles, or every oil change, whichever is sooner. It's not like modern cars. So one of the first things I'm going to have to do is I'm going to wash this out with petrol, get the air compressor on it and blow it all out. It's just filthy. And really clean it up. And also what I'll do is I'll have a look if there are any sort of metal particles in it. But I think she was running superbly when she was put back in storage. So that little cartridge goes in there. And then this just screws on top. And there is a little spring that ensures this is basically held in place. And that's it. That's basically the fueling an oil system. It is so simple and so straightforward. This is about the 8th take of this. I hope you appreciate it. Anyway, breathe. Right, so here are all the components that we've managed to actually save off of the Morgan three-wheeler, refurbish, paint, and get ready to reassemble. However, there were some components we couldn't do that with. For example, the rubber strip between the tank and the supporting bracket, clearly, because that had sort of over time decided not to exist anymore. But also, all the rubber fuel and oil lines didn't look very good. They were very, how should I put it, a bit crunchy. So I've gone out, bought some new 8mm fuel and oil resistant pipes. And also, while I was at it, I got some new clips just to make the installation rust-free and just reliable, more than anything. Now, there's one item that my dad didn't fit to the car, which I was quite surprised with, actually. So when these three-wheelers mid-30s came out of Morgan, they didn't have an inline fuel filter. Strange, you may think, but what they relied on is in the tank with the outlet, there was probably a small mesh, there probably is in there, to just make sure big particles didn't get their way to the engine. And also in this assembly here, there could well be a fine mesh inside, but that will only get rid of large particles. What we really need is a fuel filter. So I'm going to buy a period inline fuel filter and discreetly mount it behind the radiator. Well, of course, we want to protect that lovely engine, don't we? So I think that's it. I think we're ready to start our spannering on the Morgan. So here's where all the assembly is going to start. Now, clearly a rad goes on the front here when the car is finished, but I've removed it to give myself access, and of course I need to pressure test the radiator, etc, etc. So what you can see here, this is the ash frame and this beautiful aluminium that has been formed around it and sprayed in this stunning red. Now, this aluminium panel here, which is backed by a piece of wood, this I've decided not to ultra polish this, because the thing is, with a classic car, you don't really want it to look like a museum piece. It needs some patina. So the first item to go in is this strengthening bar. Now, I guess my dad put this in because what he wanted to do was make sure this aluminium wouldn't warp or drum, or I don't know what he was thinking. But what I've done is I've put in new fasteners because all the old ones were looking pretty rough. And okay, even though they are a little bit shiny, to me, what you want is the ability to make sure everything comes apart easily in the future. So 3 bolts through there, and then underneath what we do is we tighten those up with a spanner. Now I'm going to give this a go and see if I can do it. This may be one of those jobs I need the missus for. You know, those jobs where, have you got 5 minutes? So yeah, let's see if my arm is long enough to get in here.
Stay here right with me. I can't shake that feeling that we said goodbye too soon.
Next, we're going to pop on the oil filter. Now, for some reason, my dad only drilled 2 holes here. I think the reason was he fitted this after the tank and then couldn't get into drill the other 2. He didn't have things like right angle drills. But anyway, let's put some masking tape on there and then mark it up and drill.
Beside me, this isn't how it's supposed to be. Wish you stayed here right with me. I can't shake that feeling that we said goodbye too soon.
Perfect. Now, I'm not going to actually bolt that in quite yet because what I want to make sure is I can get the fuel tank in there with this in situ, because it might sort of interfere as I try and put it in. Okay, right, let's thread the tank through. Okay. Okay, right. Now, I remember this was a nightmare when I got it out. There we go. And there's the tank on the inside. Lovely, isn't it? So you can see the wooden firewall, and the tank will now be screwed in with south tappers into that to secure it. Jesus, how do I put that in? I've got to put this now over the top of the tank. How do I do that? How on earth do I do that? Did I need to put this on before I put that on? Oh, no. See, this is what happens when you don't have an instruction book. I think I've got to take these bolts out. See, that's why you never tighten anything up. I think I'm going to take these bolts out, angle this so I can get this in the, to lower the tank so I can get this in the top. I think I've got to stick rubber onto that first. That's what I reckon. I really don't, maybe I should have done it on that as well. Oh well, you live and learn. This is what happens when you're building a car. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. That's all right. That's part of the fun of it. Okay, right. So I know this goes in now. So that's good. So let's get it out.
I'm driving, you're smiling, just really doing nothing. That's the thing I like about you. On the highway, it's our way, Route 66, and we keep on driving. We just do what we wanna do. Yeah, no, nothing's complicated with you. Hey, playing songs on the radio, sing along to the words that we don't know how. Brings out the wildness. Let's just run away. Yeah, I could drive the whole along. Being with you is like being on the rodeo highways. Brings out the wildness. I got a little crush on you. You say that I'm crazy. It's just the way that I get every time that I am with you. Your laughter takes me to heaven. I just wanna make you repeat it and repeat it again. Yeah, you make the sky so blue. No, nothing's complicated with you.
Okay, let's clean this oil filter out.
Let's just run away. Yeah, I could drive the whole along. Being with you is like being on the rodeo highways. Brings out the wildness. I got a little crush on you.
before we assemble the oil filter, what I'm going to do is put a new fibre washer into the brass end cap. It's quite a tight fit over the threads, but what I'm also going to do is I'll put a little bit of sealant on the threads as well. To assemble the oil filter, the first stage is to put in the filter cartridge, which slots in like so. Push it right down in. Next, there is an indented washer, then a spring that keeps that cartridge under pressure, and then this cap goes on. And then nip it up. There we go. And there we have it. One fully assembled oil filter. It's looking good. Okay, now what I've done is I've decided before I put the oil filter back on the car, what I'm going to do is figure out where all these go. All these pipes and unions and taps. So anyway, what I've done is I've looked at photographs I've taken of the Morgan before I took all this apart. And if you look over there, you'll see a couple of images. Now just look closely at those images, because that is 40 years of fuel and oil leaks plus road grime. It is, or at least it was, disgusting. But anyway, we've got all that cleaned up now. And what I did is I took those pictures, I reversed engineered the system, and then what I've done is put them in a diagram in PowerPoint, so basically I can see what I'm doing. So I guess what we're going to start with first is the fueling system. Now that's pretty straightforward. So the fueling system, we have a tap, nice little tap here, which goes into the bottom of the tank. Then we have this rather long pipe. Now what this does, this goes through the firewall, underneath the fuel tank, and ends just before the rad. And then this termination point here then turns into rubber, like that. And then we have the carburetor. And on the carburetor, we have this pipe here. So if you can imagine, we have a pipe, flexi rubber, and then two clips. So pretty straightforward system actually, the fuel. So let me just push that up there so it's out the way. So the fueling system is not a problem. Now, oiling. Now this is a bit more involved. Okay, now in the petrol tank stroke oil tank, let's call it that, we have a tap on one exit, and then there's a second exit. And that second exit is this tiny little pipe here. And what this does, this pipe joins to this pipe with a rubber hose. So therefore another two clips. Now coming out of the other end of the oil filter, we have this little tail here. It's quite interesting, is it not? And then coming out of the tap, we have this. Now, these two lines here, what they do is they go to this union here. I don't know if you can see it, but this sits in between the V of the engine. And I'll put a picture over there of it. And this is lovely. This is made, Dad's made this out of stainless steel. It's very nice. And then these two, we have two unions here and here. That goes on there. And then we obviously have rubber hoses that join these two. So we need another 4 clips. Now on the back end of this, we then have these 2 rather interesting pipes, chrome, and these actually supply oil to the engine, but we'll worry about those later. And that's it. Pretty straightforward, really. Now, what you'll see from the pictures is my father, he was a practical man. As long as something worked, it was fine. As long as something was safe, it was fine. But what I'm going to try and do here is just make it all a little bit more logical. So where I'm going to put these on, I might tweak them a little bit. I might make an extra bracket. For example, this feed here, there is a little P-clip that goes to the chassis to make sure it's supported. But what we're going to do now is just take all this lot, put it on the Morgan, and just do everything finger tight. And the reason I don't want to clamp everything down into its final sort of torque is because if you look over there, we have to fit coils, horn, and some electrical wiring underneath that fuel tank. And of course, I'm adding a fuel filter which will go between these 2 feeds here. And that's it. So let's get over to the car and fit the pipes. So there we have it. Part 2 of the Morgan 3-wheeler build draws to a close. If you like the format of these episodes, then why don't you go and look at the Ultima RS build? That's 67 episodes of exactly this. Starting from the ground up, trying making the episodes informative, entertaining, and most of all creative, because after all, our lives today are just full of everything being disposable. So until next time, as I always say, keep smiling and enjoy your spannering. That's a take.